Today, Saturday, July the 25th, we celebrate the feast of St. James the Great, one of the trio of apostles closest to the Lord, along with his younger brother John and Simon Peter. According to St. Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, James received a singular appearance of Christ after the resurrection, subsequently becoming a prominent leader among the early Christian community in Jerusalem. In Galatians, Paul notes that James presided over the Crucial Council of Jerusalem concerning Paul's preaching to the Gentiles. And yet, as there were others named James in first century Christianity, there is some confusion about his role after the ascension of the Lord. He is called the Great to distinguish him from the other apostle of that same name, James the Less, because he was older, or taller, or the other was less prominent. Who knows? He might have been a relative of Jesus. In any event, he was born in Galilee, and like his father and brother, was a fisherman, whom Jesus called as his first disciples. Mark in chapter 3 indicates that Jesus gave him and his brother the nicknames Sons of Thunder, because perhaps of their impetuous spirit and fiery temperament. One time, when a Samaritan village refused to welcome Jesus, Luke in chapter 9 reports on how they urged Jesus to call down from heaven to destroy it. And nevertheless, it was to them that the Lord turned to on special occasions. Examples of how he, John, and Peter were among the closest followers of Jesus include accounts in the Synoptic Gospels of how Jesus brought these three with him into the home of Jairus, where his daughter was raised. How of his presence at the cure of Peter's mother-in-law. How the same three were with Jesus to witness his glorious transfiguration, and how they were called to accompany him to the Garden of Gethsemane, where they fell asleep and failed him. Both brothers, with their mother, irritated the other apostles when they had requested seats of honor of Jesus when he would sit in royal glory. Now, when Jesus asked them if they were ready to suffer as he would, they answered confidently that they could. And Jesus promised that they would indeed. James is not as singled out in accounts of the passion and crucifixion as were his brother and Peter. Yet he is thought to have been the first of the 12 apostles martyred when beheaded during the persecution of King Herod Agrippa about a decade after the death of Jesus. This is the only death pertaining to the 12 apostles to be reported in the New Testament. But here the confusion begins. According to long Spanish tradition, James was able to preach before his death in Spain, and thus became one of the most popular Spanish saints. Also, it was generally accepted in Spain that after being buried in Jerusalem, then his body was transferred to Compostela in Galicia in northwestern Spain. In any case, here the shrine of Santiago being a popular translation of the name James or Jacobus, became one of the greatest of all Christian shrines. Relics rest in the cathedral there and were referred to as authentic in a bull of Pope Leo XIII in 1884. Whatever the disputes of the genuineness of either tradition, and Spanish scholars in the past championed the traditional views most strenuously, it became a major pilgrimage, and one of the main ones in the Middle Ages. Subsequently, James was invoked there as a powerful defender against the Moors, Muslims who had conquered and ruled over large portions of southern Spain. In any event, the Shrine of Compostela does rest on the site of an early Christian cemetery and remains a meaningful goal of pilgrimage, their pilgrimage often referred to as the Way. Besides the other apostle, James the Less, son of Alphaeus, another James prominent in the first century is the author of the Epistle of St. James. This letter's authorship remains a mystery, although there is here also an unsupported tradition that James, the brother of the Lord and the first bishop of Jerusalem, was responsible for it. Now, while the author may have been James the Apostle, or another James prominent in Jerusalem, who knows for sure? Whatever, James the Apostle, as well as the others prominent in first century Christianity, stand out for their import in witnessing the faith and spreading the good news. Our second Archbishop here in Washington, entombed in our cathedral, James Cardinal Hickey, was another fine example of his namesakes. And for several years, his was the name Mass celebrants in the Archdiocese included in the Eucharistic prayers. So today, honoring the great apostle, with all his accomplishments and traditions, patron of Spain, Chile, Guatemala, Nicaragua, as well as pilgrims, of course, we ask St. James to pray for us.